Good afternoon, everyone. Moss here with a look at some of the changes to the General's Handbook Pitched Battles 2022 or 2023-2024. These just came out this morning, so I had a chance to look through them. But before I even begin, I just want to point out how many changes they had to make to a book that isn't even out yet. Look how many changes they had to make. Like, it's not a good thing that all of these changes had to be made for interactions. Like, anyway, it's not a good thing. So I'm not going to cover everything that's in this. If you wanted to have a read of all the minutia, you can have a look for yourself. A lot of these things are just clearing up things that you could have assumed was the intention, but just cleaning up some of the wording. So I'm only going to go through some of the stuff that I thought was interesting. So pretty much everything here, all of this stuff I feel is like pretty kind of self-evident. What was there in here that I thought was interesting? So Lauchon had a little change. If it is the commanding player's turn, the wizard can make a normal move or run in the following movement phase. So people were pointing out a few different models that couldn't take advantage of this anymore as hard because they couldn't follow it up with a move, but they clarified that, so you can still make a move if it's your turn. So that's pretty cool. And then I don't think really besides that there's really anything. I'm just gonna have a quick double check. Yeah, I mean everything here is pretty much as you would expect it to be. So we're just gonna move on. There were some things in the core rules, but I think we'll have a look at those at the end here. So for Auric War Clans, we got 2 new battle tactics. Now, the thing that is interesting and exciting about these 2 new battle tactics is the wording that they have. So a lot of our other battle tactics that are tied to specific subfactions will use a keyword like Cruel Boys, Iron Jaws, and so on as part of the general's profile. So if your general has the Cruel Boys keyword, then you can do this battle tactic. But these 2 battle tactics just say if the unit has, if like a friendly Cruel Boy. So there's 2. So one's called Sneak Up. You complete this battle tactic if, at the end of the turn, every friendly Cruel Boy unit is within 3 inches of any terrain feature and is more than 3 from all enemy units. This is going to be good in Cruel Boys. It's going to be good for turn 1. It's going to be good throughout the game. All you have to do is think about where you're going to be moving in a turn and then making sure that everything is within 3. It doesn't say wholly within 3. So it means that all that your units have to do is be toe touching within 3 inches of a terrain feature. This to me looks very achievable, and I'm very, very happy that they added a battle tactic. This is going to make a significant difference in our season. A significant difference. Because, as I already said, this battle tactic is achievable on many different turns. This is going to be like if there's no other battle tactic I feel I can get this turn, this is the one I'm going to try for. Now, the second battle tactic has the Iron Jaws keyword. It's Dat's our turf now. You complete this battle tactic if, at the end of the turn, 2 or more friendly Iron Jaws, pardon me, 2 or more friendly Iron Jaws units are within, not wholly within 3 inches of the center of the battlefield. So, depending on the terrain, because if you have a giant terrain feature in the center of the battlefield, this one might be very, very difficult. But otherwise, I feel like this one's going to be pretty easy. It'll be really easy to do in Iron Jaws, and it should also be pretty easy to do in Big Wa. Big Wa likes both of these a lot. If you only have 1 Cruel Boy unit in Big Wa, you just gotta have them be within 3. That's it. So I feel like Games Workshop probably already has like a relatively good idea of what they're going to do with the Auric book, like when they write it again. So I'm not sure what they're going to do with it, but I sort of like this direction. The only thing the only comment I want to make about the new book is that I still want to be able to play different factions within the Auric War Clans. Right now, there's 4 very different armies that you can play in the book, and I want to still be able to play 4 very different armies. I don't want a Skaven army where it's one army that has like a subset of rules, but fundamentally you're reducing the variety of rules and you're reducing the variety of lists within the book. I don't think that's a good idea. I still want to have distinct feeling armies. Like, I don't want to lose Cruel Boys as an army just to be replaced with like Big Wah, right? I still want to have different armies that feel different and feel good. Okay, so I think that is everything that the Orc War Clans got directly. So let's have a look at the points changes. So we're just going to go back here, right? So you can see here Orc War Clans. The thing that they added was these two different battle tactics, and then we can look at some points. Orc War Clans. Hey, look, we got points reductions across the board. Are you shocked? I am not shocked. Okay, so War Scrolls. So Beast Skewer Killowbow went down 20 points. It is now 80 points. Is it worth playing? Well, it's certainly more worth playing. This, I think, might put an end to the Grix Cruel Shot battalion in Orcs, right? Like in Big Wah, because you're only going to pay 10 more points for a Killbow if you don't take it in the battalion, but it doesn't take a hero slot, right? And it also has no restrictions with what you can do with like the other units. Like, you don't have to take 2 groups of 5 or 2 groups of 3 Bolt Boys. So I mean, if you're, if you don't care about your drops and you have a free hero slot and you're planning on taking at least 2-3 units of Bolt Boys, then sure, save yourself 10 points. But otherwise, that unit is no longer that viable in Big Wah anymore, which is fine. Beyond that, like, the fact that it's 80 points, now it's competing for the same position as a unit of Hobgrots, given that it's 80 points. So when do you take Hobgrots, and when do you take a Killbow, and when do you take an Endless Spell becomes the question. Because they are all sitting in that same kind of range. So, I mean, if your local meta has a bunch of monsters that you're interested in taking out, sure, right? Like, this could be the last 80 points of a list. That sounds fine. I would probably... I'm more likely to take it now, but I still think that the idea that you only take it if there's specific monsters that you're trying to kill, I still think that general guiding principle applies. I think all things equal, if I was just blindly going into a fight, I'd probably still prefer a unit of Hobgrots, because we need cheap screens in this army, and we need things that can run out and take space. And a Killbow is not something that can run out and take space. So, situationally good. Probably a B tier unit maybe now. Right? Maybe not an F tier unit, maybe a B tier unit, given that it's been reduced in points so much. But still needs a rewrite, right? Still just fundamentally isn't a good unit. Next, Orc Brutes get minus 10 points. Cool. That's great. I mean, Big Wah really is the only army right now, I feel, that really wants to take Brutes. Maybe Ironjaws in like a Wizard Killer list, but probably not. So, minus 10 Brute, minus 10. Usually in Big Wah, you'll be taking like a reinforced unit of Brutes, so that's 20 points. Sure, that's great. Like, sure, 10 points, great, sure, fine. Killaboss on Great Nashtooth also got a 10-point reduction. This one surprised me when I first saw it, because I felt like 130 points for a Nashtooth was already a really good deal. It was already like a really nicely priced unit. I feel like it could have gone up in price, to be honest. But, sure, like, this is even more value now. Do I think it like changes when you'll see it in what armies? I don't think so. I still think that you'll take it if that's kind of the style you're going for. So, do I think it changes if you take it in your army? Yes or no? No. But I still think it's good. Like, great value for this unit. Killaboss with Stabgrot is next. Another 10-point cost reduction. Still an unplayable model, in my opinion. Still doesn't do it doesn't do anything that you want it to do. It doesn't do anything that you really want it to do. Especially considering 30 more points and you get the Nashtooth. Like, wow, 30 more points and you get the Nashtooth underneath. So much better. So much better. So, probably still won't see play. Merknob with Belchabana got a 10-point reduction. That's fine. Sure. I'll take 10 points. This season is a season where we might very well see the Merknob. So a 10-point reduction to me sounds just fine. Gobsprak, the Malthamork, got a 20-point reduction. So awesome. I think that Gobsprak is going to be really good this season. So the 20-point reduction off Gobsprak, awesome. I'll take 20 extra points. Gordrak, the Fist of Gork, got a 40-point reduction. So he is now only 10 points more than the Mega Boss on Makrusha. I don't think you play him in Big Wa. I don't think you play him in Iron Jaws. But, you know, for all of you narrative campaign players out there, this looks great. 40-point reduction. Yeah, sure, like why not, right? Killaboss on Corpse Rupa Vulture got a 20-point reduction. A lot of Cruel Boys lists love running Vulture. Me personally, it might be my favorite model and my favorite War Scroll in the book. I think Swamp Call Shaman's the best, but this one might be my favorite. 200 points for a Vulture is a bargain. It's a bargain. I think you might very well see this played in Big Wa more now that it's been reduced by 200 points. I think that one of the things that people often forget is, like, it's a monster. It's a monster. It can smash to rubble, which is great. It has so much movement speed. It can run out onto the map and grab objectives and complete battle tactics in a way that other models in your army can't. So maneuverability in Cruel Boys, I feel, is awesome and very important. So 20-point reduction, I'm in. Mega Boss on Mach Crusher reduced by 30 points, fine, sure. I don't think it really changes what your lists are going to be for Iron Jaws. I don't think you play it in Big Wa. Mega Boss on Mach Crusher going down by 30 points. Is it enough where now you take 2 of them? Because now you're looking at 60 points if you take 2 of them. There might be some lists this season where you want to take a second Mega Boss on Mach Crusher. I doubt it. Maybe. I mean, I'd be curious to see what the points work out to with that. So that's cool. Next we have Swamp Boss Scumdrek, who took a 10-point reduction. So he is now 10 points cheaper than the generic Snatcher Boss on Sludge Raker. So this 10 points is relatively low impact. I think that if you were building a list and you needed to find 10 points somewhere, you could do this. The exchange is that you're going to be... Like, I would only do this if I had a Vulture, a Killaboss on Corpse Rupa Vulture, or some other model that could take Fasten. And because you could also play the artifact of power, Morg's Eye Pebble, you could also throw that on like a Swamp Call Shaman. And that wouldn't be like the worst thing in the world. Because you can, like, you know, having protection outside of 12 is nice. Like visibility outside of 12 from Grin and Blade, so if you can throw it on a Shaman, you know, I still feel like if you needed to find that 10 points, that would be a fair way to do it, but again, relatively low impact. And then Marshcrawler Sloggoth, the Gloomspite Gitz unit, got a 20-point increase, because Gloomspite Gitz got a lot of point increases across the board, so this is just another one of their point increases. So that's great. I mean, overall, do I feel like these points are going to really change our win rates in this game? No, I don't. None of these point reductions are going to change the core problems that Cruel Boys have. So, these points combined with the new seasonal rules, specifically how I feel Gobsprak is going to interact with them, I think it's going to make for the best that Cruel Boys have ever been. I think that this season you'll feel and see the best version of Cruel Boys that you could have on the table, and that's really good. I'm really glad that that's the case. So, so let me see. There was a couple other things that I wanted to talk about as well. One thing was that they changed a lot of War Scrolls in the game, so that they don't interact with Primal Dice in the same way that people were thinking they might before. So, for example, with Scragrot's ability, his spell Fangs of Debadmoon, you roll, you know, if people were rolling like their 4 Primal Dice and then rolling, so like you would roll, you know, your 2 dice, let's say you get 7, and then you keep throwing dice on top, and so you'd end up with a ridiculously high number like 25, and then you were rolling 25 dice, and then for every 3 up, I believe it is, you were dealing a mortal wound. So they've sort of stopped interactions like that throughout the game. There's a whole bunch of changes to different abilities, spells in particular, throughout the game. Yeah, like here it is. So for Skragrott, because Skragrott's kind of a like a war clan unit, right? Because we take them in like a lot of our armies. Lots of people are a big fan of them, myself included. But they changed the wording of Fangs of the Bad Moon. So it says, if successfully cast, pick one enemy unit within range and visible to the caster and roll a number of dice equal to the unmodified casting roll. So primal dice can be used to help get the spell off, but the unmodified casting roll is how many dice you get to roll with Fangs of the Bad Moon. So overall, great change. Like this was an obvious change that had to happen. A lot of war scrolls throughout the game got this unmodified word added into their descriptions, so that's a really good thing. So I guess for Gloomspite Gitz, so if you were running Stabbas or Shootas in your lists, they're 5 points cheaper now. So that's great. 5 more points. That's cool. Squig Hoppers went up by 10, so if you were running them as allies, they're going to be a little bit more expensive now. Who else? Fungoid Cave Shaman went up by 20 points. He was another person or another caster that I was thinking about including in the army. To be honest, I probably won't include him now. I think that in our army, I think that Swamp Call Shamans are just better because they have their poison, obviously, right? So I don't think that I'll be running Fungoid Cave Shaman. Let's see. Skragrott went up by 20 points. So, 230 points he's at now compared to Gobsprak at 240 points. And I feel like this season, the counter magic play for Orcs is going to be the winner. I think Gobsprak in particular, I think using Primal Dice to unbind and then having 10 plus and dealing D6 mortals to these casters, I think you're going to scare a lot of players. They're going to have wizards in that battalion where they get extra primal dice, and you're just going to be like, well, like if it's a 5 mana or if it's a 5 wound caster, like you better think twice about that. So I think Gobsprak is definitely better than Skragrott. As an ally, I mean, Skragrott's a great model. His 4-up ward is great. His command point is great. All those things are great. But for 230 points, I'm starting to kind of, like, I don't know. You can't abuse his Fangs of the Bad Moon with Primal Dice anymore. Thankfully. Like, that's a good change. So, yeah, we'll see. The Web Spinner Shaman on Ragnarok Spider went down 20 points. So, that might be worth checking out. I doubt it sees play in Orcs, but still. Bounders go up 10. Rock Guts went up by 10. So, our allies took a nerf. So we'll probably see fewer allies in Orcs from Gloomspite because of these point changes. Snarlfang Riders went down by 15 points. So they're 120 points now. So that's something I think could definitely... That you might see Snarlfangs in our lists, maybe. That's cool. I like that. And that's it for points for there. Okay, so finally, the last thing that I wanted to look at was just some core rule changes. There's 2 in particular that I thought were interesting. So unit coherency got changed. Instead of a unit with 2 to 5 models, now it's 2 to 6 models. So this means that any reinforced unit that starts with 3 can now be 6 in a line. Gore Gruntas. Gore Gruntas can now line up all 6 on the deployment line. And when they're fighting, you can get as many as you can in without having to break cohesion. So that's awesome. That's a slight buff to Gore Gruntas. I say slight buff because I don't think a lot of the time you're going to be able to get all 6 in a line, and they tend to lose a model relatively quickly. So it's not like the biggest buff, but it is a slight buff. And I can't think of anything else that we would take that comes in groups of 3. Rock Guts, right? As allies, so that's cool. Rock Guts can line up as a line of 6 now and still be 1 unit. So that's nice. And I believe that's everything. That's everything I could think of that you might play in Orcs off the top of my head. Lookouts are also got a change. This is a really nice change. I'm happy that this is in here. People were concerned that now that Galatian champions were gone, that all of these little foot heroes were just going to be sniped off by shooting and by spells. And that's a very fair concern. So Lookout Sir addresses that. And again, this is a good change. So the rule is changed to, you must subtract 1 from hit rolls for an attack made with a missile weapon that if the target is an enemy hero within 3 of an enemy unit that has 3 or more models. So it says it doesn't have to be a frontline unit like with Galatian champions, right? It doesn't have to be a battle line unit. It just says... Right. It just has to be within 3 or more models. So foot heroes can't stand beside each other, right? It has to actually be like a unit that has 3 or more models. If that hero does not have a mount, with the exception of companions, so this is a keyword that you'll see thrown in a lot of different places, which is fine. It also cannot be targeted by attacks made with missile weapons if the attacking model is more than 12 inches away from them. So if it doesn't have a mount, it's invisible outside of 12 to shooting attacks, missile weapon attacks. So it means that they essentially get that Grin and Blades invisible outside of 12 to shooting. All foot heroes do. The Lookout Sir rule does not apply if the enemy hero has a wounds characteristic of 10 or more. So so things like Arvalcha and Gobsprak and them, they're still invisible outside of 12 even without having to be next to a model, right? Because they are 10 or more wounds. So this is kind of a mixed bag for Cruel Boys and for Orcs in general. For Orcs in general, it's a good thing. You know, it's good. You can have your Maniac Weird Knob or your Weird Knob Shaman, standing beside some Ard Boys, and you're going to have some shooting protection, so that's really great. But because this rule is all armies now, this like foot hero invisible outside of 12, it means that other factions are going to have a plan or have thoughts about how they're going to shoot down enemy foot heroes. So that plan and that thinking is now going to apply to us as well. So if, for example, if Stormcast Eternal's like, well, I'm definitely going to run crossbows now. Liberators with crossbows. Liberators, no. No, that's not them. Judicators with crossbows. So if you're playing Stormcast, you're like, I'm going to run these crossbows. I'm going to strike. I'm going to drop them into play 11.9 inches away from an enemy foot hero and shoot them. That plan now works against us. Where before maybe you didn't have a plan for how you were going to deal with sniping foot heroes. Now lots of armies are going to have a plan, and that plan is going to counter that rule in our army. So I feel like it's good for the game overall. It's a slight buff to, let's say, non-Cruel Boy Orcs, and a slight nerf to Cruel Boy Orcs, but very slight. I don't think it'll be like a huge difference. Oh, and the very, very last thing is they had some endless spell point changes. So Pendulum went up by 10 points. Pendulum, if you haven't seen the new War Scroll, one of the things that it can do now is instead of moving in one direction, it can sort of move back and forth like a pendulum. So it's a lot better now. It's a lot better now, and is worth having a look at. For 40 points, it's definitely worth having a look. Cogs, this is a misprint. This should be green, and this should be minus 10 points. Cogs is a lot worse now. We're probably not going to play Cogs in Cruel Boys or in Orcs in general. You no longer get the reroll ability for spells, so not going to see that. If Cogs still had the reroll ability, I was seriously considering it for Cruel Boys, because all of our primal dice are going into Gobsprak. So rerolling spells is still good if you're not planning on using primal dice with them. Yeah, right? It's like all of my casts, I'm going to use primal dice. Or sorry, I'm going to use Cogs, and all my unbinds, I'm going to use primal dice. Like, that's still good. That's still really good. Horror Ghast got a 10-point reduction. Prismatic Palisade, 10-point increase. and Purple Sun got a 10-point decrease. Purple Sun is now competing with a Hobgrot unit, so that's kind of cool. So those are the changes. Just as a brief summary, I think that Iron Jaws are looking much better this season. I think that their counter magic play is going to be great. I think Big Wa is also looking good this season because of the point reductions that Orcs got across the board. Big Wa is probably your go-to if you're a competitive player and you're trying to win. I think Cruel Boys are going to do slightly better this season. The point reductions, I'll have to actually sit down and brainstorm some lists. The point reductions might be significant, but they also might not. We will find out. Let me know in the comments below how you think all of the different... I know I don't talk about Bone Splitters very much. Sorry. You know, they're not super great. People aren't really playing them. I know a few people are, and a few people love them, but let me know down in the comments what you think lists are going to look like this season. Do you think Orcs are going to do better or worse this season? How do you think things are shaping up? What kind of lists are you interested in running? Are you as interested in Gobsprack as I am? I'm very interested in Gobsprack. Let me know in the comments below. Like, subscribe, wah.